The air inside the base gym at Coronado still held the sharp tang of sweat and rubber, the floor slick with condensation from an hour of relentless punishment. Steel clanged against steel as the final set of deadlifts echoed across the space, and a cluster of young SEALs barked and laughed through their exhaustion. It was barely 0500, and the sun hadn't yet scraped the edge of the Pacific. But inside these walls, the day was already old. Just outside the weight racks, she moved silently with a mop in hand. Early 40s, lean frame, close-cropped hair streaked with gray at the temples. No name tag, no unit patch, just coveralls and boots that had seen years more than some of these operators had been alive. She cleaned the floor with the same quiet intensity they trained with. Methodical, efficient, invisible. They noticed her, but not really. "Hey, careful, mop," one of them called out as he mock-sprinted across the floor, boot prints streaking her freshly mopped section. The others snorted. One made a half-hearted apology. She didn't flinch, didn't even glance up, just kept pushing the mop in slow, even strokes like none of them were there. On the bench press nearby, Senior Chief Dana rolled his sore shoulder, the bruise from his fall still fresh and aching. He'd hit the mat wrong during hand-to-hand drills the day before, and he wasn't in the mood for the boys' usual antics. His eyes drifted to her. There was something about her posture, not just disciplined, but conditioned. Her stance was centered, stable. Her left hand, when she paused, unconsciously covered her right wrist, a reflex he hadn't seen since Kandahar. She wasn't just some cleaning lady. When his water bottle slipped and rolled under the rack, he walked over. She bent down, picked it up before he could reach, and handed it over. "Thanks," he said, catching her eyes for the first time. They were steady, cool, gray, not bored, just done trying to impress anyone. "You from around here?" he asked, casually. "Not anymore," she said. Voice low, accent neutral, Navy crisp. He paused. "You prior service." She just looked at him. Dana hesitated, then leaned slightly closer, lowered his voice. "Djibouti, 2007. You there?" For a moment, her expression didn't change. Then she said 3 characters, almost under her breath. A number, a call sign. No explanation. Dana stepped back like he'd seen a ghost. His face changed, the color gone from it. He turned slowly, walked toward the weight rack, and passed the bottle to another operator. "Ask her," he said, voice quiet. "Ask her if she was Ren." The joke at the squat rack stopped mid-sentence. A couple heads turned. Someone laughed nervously, until she turned to wring out the mop and the light caught the long, old scar running behind her, down her neck, fading into the collar of her shirt. Nobody said another word. The clank of weights continued, but softer now. Something in the room had shifted. No one quite knew what they were looking at, but they all knew it wasn't just a janitor. Nobody said another word. The clank of weights carried on, but softer now. The room hadn't gotten colder, but something in it had. The name she'd spoken, just a number, just a call sign, had sucked the air out of the gym like a vacuum. A few of the younger SEALs exchanged looks. Confused, curious. One of them opened his mouth to speak, then thought better of it. And across the room, Senior Chief Dana sat very still. Because he remembered. Djibouti, 2007. Back then, the Horn of Africa was a chessboard of blurred lines, official missions, unofficial allies, and one constantly shifting rule. Don't get caught in something you weren't supposed to be doing. The SEAL team had been sent in on a fast grab. Intel said the target was holed up near the border. But the village had been a trap, and within minutes, the plan collapsed. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Key, their team lead, was wounded and separated. The LZ got too hot. Exfil was aborted. No reinforcements. No second chance. The report said Key was MIA for 2 days. The story, scrubbed and redacted, chalked his survival up to partner assistance. But the ones who'd seen the original map, the real sit rep, knew that area had no friendlies, no support, and no extraction orders were ever approved after the mission failed. Except, someone got him out. She hadn't worn a uniform, but everyone knew her by call sign. Ren, a classified Intel Ops liaison embedded with African partner forces. Technically, she wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the field. She wasn't a SEAL, not even a service member. Just another nameless asset in a sea of shadow logistics. But Ren didn't wait for signatures when lives were on the line. The night Nkee went down, she rerouted a Kenyan special operations team on her own authority, unofficial and sanctioned. She'd worked with them before. They trusted her, even if Washington wouldn't admit she existed. She rode with them into the no-go zone, slipping through dust-choked hills in a vehicle that barely ran, comms gear hanging out the window, rifle clutched low and tight. She found Nkee barely conscious, trapped under the wreckage of a downed Recon drone, his side torn open. She patched him where he lay, stabilizing him with field medicine learned from a dozen missions that never happened. With her guidance, the Kenyans cleared a narrow corridor under cover of a brewing sandstorm. She called in a medevac using equipment that had been deactivated months prior, then reactivated it anyway. And then she vanished. By the time the rotor blades thumped into the sky, she was gone. Back behind the curtain. No name on the mission brief. No mention in Nkee's debrief. Even his own men only heard fragments later. Kenyan forces located him. An unnamed asset assisted. That was all. Dana had heard more than that. A few details in a quiet room, years later. A story told not as rumor, but reverence. The woman now mopping sweat off the gym floor had once saved a SEAL commander under fire with no backup, no authority, and no reward. She had become the ghost they wrote out of the record books. And now here she was, back on base, wearing a janitor's badge instead of citation. If anything, the gym incident should have tipped them off. But most of the younger SEALs wrote it off as a weird moment, a fluke. They didn't know what Djibouti in 2007 meant. Didn't recognize the call sign. Didn't care to. So by the time morning chow rolled around, the old rhythms were back. Jokes flew across the long tables in the dining hall, bootlace bravado bouncing from one end to the other like a football, and somewhere near the corner where the cleaning crew had set up, she moved with the same quiet routine, collecting trays, wiping tables, invisible again. Bet she sleeps in the janitor closet with the mop bucket, one of the newer operators muttered, just loud enough for the guys at his table to laugh. Probably dreams of soap and bleach. No one challenged him. A few tables over, Dana heard it, but didn't look up from his tray. He just chewed slower, eyes on the woman who, even now, navigated between boots and elbows without so much as brushing a chair. He watched her reflexively shift her tray hand as someone bumped past her, didn't spill a drop. Then, a tray slipped off the edge of a counter as one of the kitchen staff fumbled a stack. She caught it without looking, like she'd heard it falling before gravity made up its mind. Outside, in the barracks lot, she swept gravel from the curb where a few trucks were parked. A corporal walking past noticed a friend coming up from behind and gave a playful shout, just as one of them accidentally sloshed coffee near her boots. A little test. She paused, looked down at the splash, then resumed sweeping without breaking stride. No glare, no protest, just work. But the ones watching closely saw her weight shift slightly forward just before the coffee hit. Like she'd known it was coming. Like she'd seen this kind of thing before. Just not from kids. Later that afternoon, in the armory hallway, she passed two enlisted checking their rifles on the bench. That's not the recoil spring, son, she said without slowing. That's a misaligned buffer tube. It'll jam by round 4. The younger of the two blinked. How? She was already gone down the hallway. Now the jokes started getting thinner. Some of the younger SEALs started whispering instead of laughing. One pulled out his phone in the mess hall that evening and typed Ren Djibouti into a search bar. Nothing. Just articles about birds and an encrypted academic journal on regional drone surveillance. Another, more curious, dug deeper, military intranet archives, restricted brief indexes. He found a photo. Blurry. Face blurred. A woman crouched behind a SEAL on a stretcher, hand pressed hard to his side as they lifted him into a helicopter. The caption read only, MIA recovery, classified assets support. The file was marked redacted and sealed. Back at the table, his hands felt a little colder. He glanced toward the back of the room where she stood near the mop station, wringing out a cloth with perfect economy of motion. She never looked up, And that, more than anything, was what started to get under their skin. She wasn't asking to be noticed. She wasn't dropping hints. She wasn't correcting them, scolding them, or flexing knowledge. But little by little, she was starting to make them doubt what they thought they knew. It was near midnight when the alarm went off. Short, sharp, wrong. Not the usual drill cadence. The base's weapons storage bunker, known simply as Deck 7, lit up in red. Sirens screamed through the steel corridors. A muffled bang echoed from the lower level, followed by a sudden flicker of light. Then smoke, thick and fast, curling through the ventilation ducts like it knew where it was going. Inside, a junior SEAL named Brooks was on inventory rotation with a logistics tech, a kid barely out of tech school. They'd been logging crate serials when the round went off. No one was sure how it discharged. Brooks hit the deck fast, but the tech wasn't so lucky. The kid had taken the brunt of the shockwave and now lay crumpled under the storage rack, unmoving. Panic edged into Brooks' chest as the overhead lights cut out completely, replaced by dim emergency red. Automatic lockdown protocols kicked in. Doors sealed. Ventilation halted. The emergency intercom sputtered, then went dead. Brooks called for help on comms. Static. He yelled. No one answered. Somewhere above, someone was fumbling for a plan, but no orders came. On the upper deck, in the control room, 2 security officers scanned the camera feeds. Movement blurred in the smoke, heat signatures confused. One feed showed the corridor clear. Another showed Brooks crouched beside the fallen tech, slapping his chest, trying to wake him. And then, something strange. In camera 9, the janitor was visible, barely. She'd been seen just minutes ago sweeping near the stairwell. Now, she wasn't on any feed at all. She had vanished off the grid, like a ghost stepping between frames. Below, a soft hiss broke through the silence. Manual pressure overrides began cycling. One by one, the fire containment seals disengaged, not by central command, but locally, in sequence. Brooks froze as the lights above flickered back, not full power, but enough to see the smoke pulling away through restored vents. Then she was there. No announcement, no warning, just the quiet squeak of boots on the steel floor. She moved through the haze like she'd done it 100 times. In her hands, an old, battered field med kit, the kind you didn't find in janitorial closets. She dropped to one knee, opened the kid's shirt, and went to work. Not just pressure on the wound, not just basic CPR. She packed the laceration with gauze, double-checked the airway, and strapped on a portable air canister with practice speed. No hesitation, no wasted movement. When Brooks reached out to help, she said nothing, just slid a gloved hand toward his to hold the tech's shoulder still. By the time Base Command finally regained partial control of the doors, the kid's vitals had stabilized, and she had already prepped him for transport. She stepped back as the response team rushed in, blending instantly into the chaos like she'd never been there. No one had told her to act. No one had even known she was still in the building. But when the systems froze and the leaders stalled, she moved. And when they checked the logs later, they'd find no record of a keycard accessing Deck 7, because she hadn't needed one. The morning after the incident on Deck 7, the Base Command briefing room filled earlier than usual. No scheduled drills. No posted meetings. Just quiet orders passed overnight. Be there. Sit down. Don't ask questions. The air was tight with tension, and not even the usual coffee mugs or wisecracks cut through it. At the head of the table stood Lieutenant Colonel Jeffers, the base CO, square-shouldered, no-nonsense, career Navy. He didn't look angry. He looked like a man who'd seen a shadow move when no shadow should have been. Behind him, the large display screen cycled between security footage stills. Deck 7 at the moment of the blast, Brooks pulling the tech out into the corridor, and a blur, just a blur, of someone crouched over the injured man. No facial recognition. No timestamp matches. She shouldn't have been there, Jeffers said, eyes scanning the room. No logs. No comms. No chain of command. A junior lieutenant cleared his throat. So, she had an A-kit. Knew exactly where the bypass was. She fixed the door override. Jeffers turned. Who is she, exactly? Silence stretched until one voice, quiet, unsure. cut through. "The janitor, sir. I think her name is Wren." The room went still. Major Rankin, sitting 3 chairs down, blinked like someone had slapped him. "What did you say?" "Wren," the SEAL repeated, more hesitant now. "That's what she said in the gym. Couple days ago. Just a call sign." Rankin stood, left the room without a word. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then the door swung open again, not with drama, just weight. In his hand, Rankin carried a single, battered folder, the kind with too many stamps on it. He walked straight to the table, dropped it, and flipped it open. One photograph, grainy, black and white, a dust-swirled helipad, a SEAL being lifted onto a medevac stretcher, blood soaking the front of his blouse. Next to him, a woman crouched low, bracing his neck, eyes to the sky. Her face blurred. No name, only a typed caption. Djibouti, 2007, redacted asset support. The room went colder. Jeffers picked up the folder, scanned the accompanying form, half of it blacked out, and looked up slowly. "That SEAL," he said, tapping the photo, "is Command Mkey." Murmurs began. The name carried weight here. Mkey had built the foundation of this very team a decade ago before his promotion to a senior advisory post. He was legend, untouchable, and the woman who saved his life had been mopping their floors yesterday. Jeffers didn't say another word. He left the room, folder in hand, boots hitting the hallway tile with a force that told every officer present, this wasn't done. Down in the mess hall, morning chatter echoed as usual. Metal trays, dull laughter, the scrape of chairs. She stood off to the side, rinsing out a rag in a pail, head down. Jeffers walked straight toward her. His voice was clear, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "Did you pull my CO out at Djibouti?" She paused, turned slowly. Her eyes met his without hesitation. No posturing, no defense, just tied clarity. "I did," she said simply. And the room stopped. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Conversations died in mid-sentence. A dozen SEALs turned in unison, faces shifting from confusion to disbelief to something else, something closer to reverence. Jeffers gave the smallest nod, and she went back to work. 1 week later, she was still mopping floors. Same boots, same slow rhythm through the corridors of Coronado. The same mop bucket rolling softly behind her, the same quiet nod to anyone who passed. But the air around her had changed. It wasn't loud, and it wasn't announced. But those who had once joked when she entered a room now stepped aside without a word. Not out of fear, out of something deeper. Respect. In the armory, a junior SEAL lingered awkwardly after morning inventory, holding his notebook like a shield. He said quietly, not quite meeting her eyes, "Would you ever talk to the team about operational discipline? Not war stories, just how to think under pressure." She didn't answer at first, just wrung out the mop, set it back into the bucket, and glanced at him with a half-smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "No," she said, "but thank you for asking." He nodded like it was an answer he already expected and still respected. Later that afternoon, back in the corner of the supply bay where she kept her cart, she found something sitting in the mop bucket, wrapped in a folded cloth. Clean, intentional. Inside it, nestled like something sacred, was an old SEAL trident pin, worn with age, edges dulled, but polished by hand. She never asked who left it, never said if it had once been hers. She just folded the cloth again, pressed it flat, and tucked it quietly into the deep pocket of her coveralls. That evening, as the sun sank low over the Pacific and the final flag lowering began on the base grounds, she stood a few yards back near the perimeter, watching. Alone, not part of the formation, just a silent witness to the ritual she had helped preserve in ways no one could count. The flag came down slow and smooth, catching the last light of day. And as the ceremony ended and the small crowd began to disperse, Commander Jeffers passed by her on the path. He didn't stop her, didn't speak. He just paused, turned, and gave her a sharp, wordless salute. She didn't salute back, but she gave a small, steady nod. For her, that was enough. Have you ever met someone who seemed invisible until they weren't? Drop your salute in the comments. Let's honor the quiet ones who made all the difference.